All right. Well, today on the podcast, we have Ellie Pashley on the show. Welcome to the show, Ellie.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for having me.
Okay, friends, these Australian friends that we have are super kind. It's 7 a.m. Ellie's time. So you're getting a fresh out of bed human being right now.
Who's not a very good morning person, so apologies in advance, everybody.
Oh, it's amazing. Well, it's hard to be on super early too. Like I need like a full hour before I run, before I talk to anybody, before I do anything. So this is really impressive.
Yeah, it should be okay. I think if it was any earlier, I would have struggled a little bit, but seven's okay.
You've committed to a full hour long conversation. Will you go run after this?
Yes, I will. Yeah, I've got an hour, just an easy jog to do this morning, so I'll do that afterwards.
What do you usually get up around 7? Like what do you usually did you have to set your alarm early?
No, I usually get up at 7. Most days, the days that I work, I don't start till a bit later, so I don't really run till between 8 and 9 o'clock anyway. So
Okay.
yeah, this is pretty normal for me. My husband has to go to work, so he sets his alarm for 7 every day.
Okay. So
Anyway,
he's up getting ready for work.
yeah,
I always say that if I didn't ever set an alarm or ever have kids waking me up, I think 7 is like as an adult is like the most perfect time to just naturally let your body wake up.
yeah, I think so as well. I think naturally I would probably wake up between 7 and 7:30 anyway. Once it gets sort of beyond 8 o'clock, you feel like you're wasting a bit of the day, I think.
Totally. Okay, so what's going on in your world right now? I know you ran London and we'll talk about that, but what have you been up to and what are you training for right now?
Yeah, so we're in the middle of summer over here at the moment, which is nice. And I've just been ticking along training post London. I had a little bit of a break. We had to do hotel quarantine when we got home,
Mm.
so it took me a little while to get back into, I guess, full fitness. But we've got the Australian 10,000 meter championships is coming up in a couple of weeks, so I'm just trying to get as fit as I possibly can for that. And then, yeah, beyond that, we're not really sure. Maybe a couple of local road races. I'm not sure what marathons are going ahead this year.
Mm.
There hasn't been much racing in Australia over the last 12 months. So it's pretty much just trying to get as fit as I can so that I'm ready to race when races pop up.
Yeah, do you think I was just thinking about this, like since London showed that they could do that pretty well with just the elite field, do you think that more of the majors are just going to do that? So Boston not happening, like do you think that those races will happen for just the elites?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the tricky thing for a lot of those events is the mass participation is what funds
Yeah.
the elite field essentially. So I don't know if it's a very sustainable model for them because it would cost them a fortune to put the events on without really getting anything back. And I mean, it might be something that they have to do for a little while, and some events may choose to do it. It definitely doesn't have the same atmosphere as a mass race, and it's been a little bit sad this year, not having any of those events go ahead as normal. So it's hard to say what will happen, but maybe as the vaccine
Mm.
starts going sort of spreading through the world, they might be able to start holding mass races again, which would be really exciting.
Yeah, it's like hard to believe it's actually happening, but it feels hopeful. Like people, this is happening. People are getting vaccinated. It's exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think it probably shows that there might be, I mean, not an end point because
Yeah.
this is going to be something we have to live with for a long time, but yeah, we might be able to live semi-normally again in the
Yeah.
next year or two. It's exciting.
So, what is it like switching gears from, marathon to 10K? I know you specialize in both at this point in your career. Are you running really fast right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to trying to get fast again, which definitely speed is not my strength. So I've been working through summer on. I actually have been trying to get fast enough to run a 5K. I'm running a 5K
Mm.
tomorrow night, which I'm really not a good 5K runner. So that that will be very interesting. But yeah, a lot of shorter, faster reps, and just gradually building my mileage back up. And then yeah, marathon specific work won't start until we know exactly what races are happening, or yeah.
Okay, so your 10K PR is 31:18, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so what is your 5K PR?
So my technical 5K PR is actually 16:05,
Okay.
which is quite a lot slower than my
Yeah.
10K splits. Uh, and that was, I think, a couple of years ago in Geelong, which is a city near where I live. So yeah, I don't know, I really struggle trying to run any faster than 10K pace. Um, so I'm hoping to lower that tomorrow night, but yeah, I've got a bit of work to do in the 5K.
Isn't that fun though to know like you've progressed so much in your career since you last really gave it a go that even if you have a not so great race, you're going to PR.
Yeah, hopefully.
You will. There's no way. Unless it's like a million degrees and like you get stomach cramps.
Yeah, hopefully. I'd definitely be disappointed if I don't run in the 5K, but yeah, we'll see. I still find it the hardest event at all. It's harder than a marathon, I think.
Oh my gosh. I agree. Just a different kind of hurt for sure. It's just such a shorter time period. Okay. We will get into London. We've done a couple post London interviews, which were really fun. And I love hearing about that race. Let's introduce you a little bit more to the listeners. I believe, well, I guess you're my third Australian runner on the show because I had Sinead Diver,
Yep.
after, gosh, it must have been after the 2019 New York, 2018 or 19. I can't remember now.
Yeah, I think I listened to Sinead's interview. I think it was after New York.
It was
Uh,
one of the years. They all are like meshing together now.
yeah, 2019, because we both did it together that year, I think it would
Okay.
have been.
Okay. And then recently Jess Hole on the show. So number 3 for the Australians, which is fun. Can you share a little bit about your progression into this marathon and 10K running? Because you're 32 now, so I know that um, your journey to get here looks a little different than what we hear, like, Jess Hole, for instance, who came over to America and ran Big Tens and everything. So, can you just share what your college experience looked like and when you decided, hey, I'm going to like really give this thing a go?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, like you said, my journey has been a little different to Jess's. So we don't have a college sports system over here like you guys do. So there is probably for a lot of Australian athletes a period where some people sort of get lost through that university
Mm.
time, unless they go to the States for college, really, because yeah, I guess there's a lot of other distractions happening, and um, athletics in Australia probably doesn't have the same level of prestige, I guess, compared with some of our other sports like team sports. So we do lose a lot of athletes through that period, and I was probably similar in that I ran through. I started doing little athletics when I was a child, which is basically like a junior athletics thing on a Saturday morning that we have here in Australia. And then I did cross country through high school, but I was playing a lot of other sport. And then when I went to uni, I basically did nothing other than I played some team sports. So I played netball and basketball, and
Just like
I did that.
recreational.
Yeah. Oh, I played netball relatively seriously,
Okay.
but not at a really high level. But you guys don't have netball over there, do you? It's
I
a
mean, is that similar to pickleball? Is that the same thing? Or we just like, do we just call it something
uh,
different here?
I'm not sure. It's similar to basketball,
Okay, that's not
except you
pickleball then.
have,
Okay, what do you do?
yeah, you have a team. There's 7 people on the court, but people have got their own area that they're allowed to go in. There's all different
Okay.
positions. Yeah, and then there's this net at the end of the court which you shoot into, similar to a basketball ring. So I was playing that through uni, and then I sort of got back into running a little bit towards the end of uni, just with local fun runs, and I started running with a local training group in the town where I lived at the time, and then sort of floated in and out of of running after that for a little bit. I was working at a running store in Geelong, which is a town near where I live now, just as I was finishing off uni. And I guess I met a few people, including my now coach Julian, whilst working there. So I got a little more into it, but I was still pretty slack, to be honest. And then it wasn't until we went overseas traveling for a while, and we came back, and I was horrendously unfit. And I decided I never wanted to get that unfit again. And I stopped playing netball, I think, just before that point, and decided I was going to run a marathon. So I got Julian, who was my friend at the time. We did a bit of running together, and I asked him to coach me. And yeah, I started training for my first marathon, which I was so petrified of the marathon distance that it was the first time I actually followed a program
Mm.
properly and really put everything into it. And yeah, so I was basically, from then I decided I was going to take it seriously and see what I could do.
Okay, so a couple questions.
That was 2016, sorry.
Oh yeah, yeah. So that was
Yeah.
when you ran the 2:45 in Melbourne.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you said you were traveling overseas, was that you and your husband just kind of like being young and traveling while you can and having an experience?
Yeah, it was. So we spent almost a year in Central and South America and then Europe. So just yeah, not much running.
What were you doing? Were you just like backpacking and just exploring the countries and the cities that you went to?
Yeah. Basically, we worked at a hostel for a little bit
Oh, cool.
in Nicaragua, but then the rest of the time we saved a chunk of money before we left, and it was basically just traveling for as long as we could until we
Ran out of
ran
money.
out. Yeah, so it was pretty low budget travel. I think we were trying to find as many $2 night hostels as we could.
That's so cool. I'm so pro that. I am not a great traveler myself, but I always tell people, young people, like, go if you have the passion to go do that. Go do that. You can't just go travel the world. Well, you can once you have kids, but it's a lot more complicated if you have kids, you know? So I'm like, if you're young, go do that. That's so cool that you just went and made it happen. Was that more you or your husband? Or did you both have equal passion to do it?
Probably initially it was more me that wanted to do it, but then he grew to really love traveling, particularly from that trip, I think. And we actually went with a group of friends. So the first few months was a group of us that all went to university together here in Australia. So yeah, we had a pretty fun time. I don't know if I could do it now. I don't know if I could live
I know.
the same way, but it was awesome. Good
Yeah,
experience.
that's the other thing too. Like, you're also at that age like more willing to do everything on the cheap to get that experience in.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh man, sometimes I wish I would have done that, but I know I'm just a better human when I sleep in my own bed.
Maybe down the track when your kids are all grown up.
Yeah, hold on just a second. What? No, you may not. Shut the door. My kid's asking if they can have ice cream right now. Just no, you may
Trying to
not.
get you when you're busy.
Yeah, like so I can just say, yeah, sure, go ahead. Okay, I'm super intrigued by this like first marathon experience to, your progression to where you are now. So 2016, you're 32 now, so you were what, 27, 28?
Yeah, I think I was 27 when I did it.
I mean, another really cool part of your story, and not that I'm telling people who are professionals at 22 to not be professionals at 22, but it's kind of cool that you got those like years to not be so focused on training and kind of just live a little outside of it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's part of me that probably wishes I took it seriously a little earlier, or
Mm-hmm.
whether I tried to come to the US for
Sure.
and run at a college over there. But yeah, I mean, I did have some years of good life experience, and I was working and traveling, and also when I started running, trying to manage a full-time workload with running, which I think makes me appreciate now working less.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really good. I just hope that I haven't left it so late that then I'm not going to have too much time
But
with
surely,
the
like
running.
Sinead, like running with her shows you that you have lots of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's a big inspiration to everybody in Australia, I think, and she's still running faster than ever, and has a lot of years left, hopefully.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is one thing that does give me confidence. If I can keep going until I'm, yeah, even close to 40, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when you look at the major marathons, who's placing in the top three is usually women in their mid to late 30s.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
it's
not
really interesting.
always. I guess I haven't seen the percentages, but it seems like it's often that that's the case.
Yeah, yeah, I think and they do talk about women peaking a little later than men as well, and yeah, it's it's exciting that there's still some time left. But yeah, I guess you just never know what's around the corner with injury and stuff like that. So
True.
trying to yeah, make the most of things while I can.
So let's talk about that progression. So you run the Melbourne Marathon in 2016 in that 2:45. You're being trained by your coach Julian, who is still your coach now, who you met at the running store, which I think that's so cool. I mean, I most of us runners have gotten to know employees at local running stores, and I think it's cool to hear that being part of your story. What did that first training plan look like? How much were you running?
Yeah, so it was. I think I started running every day because prior to that I hadn't been. And I think he built me up in that program to around 100 Ks a week, which is
Okay.
probably about 60 miles a week.
Okay.
Maybe a little more. I might have gone just over, but that was quite a lot for me at the time. So yeah, that was more mileage than I'd ever done, and I got through that block without any injury or anything like that. So that was positive, and he was very conscious, I think, of not going straight to high mileage. So that one was a nice a building block, and then from there each year we've gradually added some mileage.
Yeah, and you've progressed each year. I mean, I'm just going to, so the listeners know, and you correct me if I'm wrong on any of these. You then run Berlin in 2:35 in 2017, 2:31 in Cape Town in 2018, and then you go down to 2:26. I can't, what's the word? How do you pronounce that city or that
Oh,
marathon?
Nagoya.
Nagoya? Okay.
Yeah,
um, and then you
in
go
Japan.
run the 2:26 in New York in 2019. So that's really quite the big progression year to year, but it looks like it's a healthy progression. Like you never like took off these massive, I guess, I mean, 2:45 to 2:35, that's pretty massive. But tell us about what that progression did look like.
Yeah, so I mean, each time I was relatively surprised, to be honest. But when I look back, I between Melbourne and Berlin, I had a year, so my mileage went up quite a lot in that time. I
Okay.
think I probably went from running, yeah, 100 Ks a week to maybe 130 or so, a lot more regularly. And I also had that first block under my belt. So yeah, that 10-minute PB was still surprising. I think I wanted to run under 240 that day.
Oh, wow.
So I was very pleased with that. Yeah. And then Cape Town was only a few minutes, but Cape Town was quite a hilly course, and it was also really warm weather that day. So we were coming out of Australian winter, and it was in September. Um, so that day, that 2:31, and it was quite a tactical
Mm.
race as well. There was lots of surging, and I think I walked away from that, and I was pretty confident that I could run under 2:30 in my next one if it was flat and cool. So yeah, that was really good fun though, going and running a marathon in Cape Town. And then Nagoya again, yeah, my goal was sub 2:30,
Wow.
and there was a little, it was a bit tricky because the pace groups, Sinead was actually one of the pacers, and she was pacing 2:25, which was the slowest pace group.
Wow.
Um, yeah, the
That's
Japanese women
fast.
like to run fast. So I was in a bit of uh, a pickle as to whether I went with that group, which I knew was too fast, or ran by myself basically and tried to run, 228, 229 on my own. And I ended up going with Sinead's group because I knew as well how good she would be at
Mm.
at pacing and running evenly and things like that. So I took a bit of a gamble and ran with that group that day. And then yeah, I was pretty surprised to run 226. To be honest, I thought this is going to could be an epic blow up,
Yeah.
but I hung on for a 2:26. So yeah,
How
that was a very exciting day.
how long were you with the pace group?
So I stayed with them until around 25 or
Oh
27K, I
wow.
think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I had a bit of an upset stomach, so I dropped off because I wasn't feeling very well. And then had a bit of a slower period through there, and then I think I was able to pick it back up at the end just because I started to feel
Mm.
good again. So yeah.
So when did you know? And I asked this question because I read somewhere that the expectations that come with your ability could be like a little bit intimidating. Do I want to work that hard? Right? I know what I could do, but I also know what it's going to take to do that. So, A, when did that settle in that you were going to go for it? And then B, once you started running these marathons, when did you realize, oh, my potential is that I could be an Olympian? I could run sub 2:30. And, obviously you could be an Olympian in the 10K or the marathon at this point.
Yeah, I think in the back of my mind, I always knew when I was playing other sports, even, and I really loved team sport, but I probably always knew that I was better at long distance running,
Mm.
even though I hated to admit it. But yeah, so I think there was always a part of me that thought, oh, once I'm done, traveling and doing this and that, I would like to run a marathon, or I would try to have a bit more of a go at running and see how much I can improve. So it was in the back of my mind, but yeah, it wasn't until I decided to do the marathon that I wanted to train properly for that, purely out of fear of how horrible a marathon could be. Um, and then as soon as I finished that first marathon, I was just hooked. Like, I think the Melbourne Marathon finishes in a football stadium called the MCG, and running into that stadium at the end, I got this almost overwhelming sense of emotion that I had never ever got from running or any sport really before. And it, yeah, it was just the best feeling in the world. And I think probably a big part of that was that I had put a lot more effort into this race, and I'd trained properly, and I knew that I'd done everything I could. And then obviously the mental battle that you have for 2.5 hours or however long when you're running a marathon, it really is quite a grind. So yeah, I think that feeling that I got finishing the marathon that day, I was just like, yeah, this is what I want to do now. This is all I want to do. And straight away I said to Julian after the race, when can I do another one?
Oh.
Which one should we do next? I was just so pumped. So yeah, I guess that was when I decided I wanted to keep running marathons, but I really had no idea where it would take me. And I wasn't expecting to get anywhere near, um, 2:30 or anything like that. I just thought, I could try and improve on my time, and not really being that top tier within Australian runners, but probably, yeah, somewhere a little further down the ranks. But yeah, I think Nagoya, the 2:26 was the first time I probably believed that, yeah, I had a chance to maybe start making some international teams, because at the time they'd just released the Olympic qualifying standards, and so I'd run under that. Um, so yeah, I mean, it was still a long way out from the Olympics, and we've got some really good depth at the moment in Australia in the marathon, so it's going to be a very tricky team to make. But
Mm.
yeah, I knew crossing the line, I guess, that day, because I'd turned my watch off as well, because I'd been having some stomach issues. I thought, oh, I don't really want to know how much time I've lost or how much I've blown up. I'm probably not going to break 2:30 anymore. I'll just turn my watch off and run home, not worrying about it. And so I turned with about 500 meters to go into the stadium, and I remember them telling us in the technical meeting the day before that there'd be a clock at 500 to go and a right hand turn. And I saw this clock and the right hand turn, and I calculated, how long it would take me to run 500 meters, and realized what time I was going to run, and I was, yeah, just blown away. So I guess that last 500 meters into the finish line was the first time I thought, oh, I'm actually going to run the Olympic qualifier here, and maybe, yeah, that might be a possibility for me now. So that was an enjoyable way to finish a marathon.
What mile or K did you turn your watch off at?
I turned it off at, I think about 30 Ks.
So that's like 18 miles, right?
Oh, yes, yep,
Okay.
about 18 miles, yeah. So
And so
I was
you didn't
running blind
know.
for a bit. No, I didn't know. And I knew I was catching some people that were coming back from
Mm.
the group I'd been running with earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
um, I wasn't sure if they'd just blown up or I really had no idea what pace I was running. And there, I don't think I saw another clock until I got to the 500 meters to go. So I could see the K markers and I knew I was, at 38K, 40K. But yeah, it wasn't until I saw that clock that I sort of realized that I hadn't actually lost anywhere near as much time as I thought I had. So yeah,
Do
that was
you
fun.
think if you would have left the watch running that it would have messed with your head and you would have slowed down?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I think once I started feeling better, I don't know
Mm.
that it would have, but um, yeah, it definitely can. If once you're blowing up and you are slowing down,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, for me particularly, I find it does mess with my head, and I don't. It's better if I don't know. So yeah, I don't know what it would have been like if I knew that I was actually picking up pace again, but yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too. I mean, that story just proves too to anybody that you can feel really bad at some points of the marathon, and that doesn't mean that your marathon is done. You got to ride that wave.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something I've learned sort of over the past few marathons that I've done that even if you don't feel good at the start,
Yeah.
there's going to be so many different feelings throughout and just not to, if you can help it, don't give up, don't stop because yeah, you don't know what's going to happen in the last 5, 10 Ks. And you don't know, there's so many races where there might be quite a few people in front of you that end up pulling out and you
Mm.
finish a lot higher than thought you were going to, or yeah, so you've just got to stay in it and see what happens.
Yeah, that was one of the things when I talked to Sarah Hall after London. Like, we talked about looking at that start list in London and how many people in that race had times that were just way faster than she had ever run. But she still ended up finishing second. And it's like if you look at that list and you place yourself where you're seated or whatever it is, well, you're just like kind of giving up before you even start.
Yeah, exactly. And I heard her saying in an interview as well that she didn't feel very good in London and she even considered stopping maybe at
Mm-hmm.
some point. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure she's very glad she didn't now.
Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the Cape Town race was super tactical, and I think we see tactical races happen more in track. What was so tactical about that race?
Yeah, so there was the lead pack was quite big and it was a bit windy that day as well, so nobody wanted to
Mm.
sit at the front. So it ended up being myself and Halalia Johannes, who's a Namibian runner. We ended up sort of keep finding ourselves at the front of the pack
Mm.
with a huge pack of girls sitting on us, probably because we were both quite a bit taller than everybody else as well. And then we were sort of probably running slow to try and encourage other people to
Mm-hmm.
to do some work. And it was really surgy, slow down. I think with the hills as well, it started off really, really slow, like much slower than I was hoping to run.
Mm.
And then, yeah, but I also didn't want to go off at the front and have
Right.
everybody sitting on me for 20 Ks. So yeah, that was good experience for me as well, especially coming off a background with not a lot of track racing experience. I think it was good for me to actually be in a marathon like that. And it just started kicking down. So we got to maybe 25, 30K and they just started winding up the pace and people were going off the front making moves. And so there was a lot of surging, slowing down. And yeah, I totally blew to smithereens at about 35K, I think, and got dropped from the pack.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was quite a fun race.
Okay, so you also mentioned, that feeling you had at Melbourne when anybody who's run a marathon, no matter how fast or slow, I think we can all agree that that first marathon finish, especially, is just really special. But also, when I take breaks from running and I come back and I do a marathon, I kind of get those same similar feelings. Have all those marathons since had that much of a special feeling, or is it kind of Man, died down sounds like super sad to say, but what do the finish lines feel like now?
Yeah, I think London was probably a little bit of
Yeah.
a different feeling for me. I didn't have a great race that day, but yeah, I mean, like you said, probably none compare to that sense of achievement that you get when you finish your first marathon. But certainly every one that I've done and finished, I do get a huge rush at the end of the race. And I almost have a bit of an emotional high, I think, for a day or two after, and then a bit of a crash. I have a couple of days after a marathon where I feel really flat, and I think it is that high that you get after a race like that. So yeah, I mean, it's still always a special feeling for me, and I almost love the nervous, week or two leading in, and that it's it's very stressful going into a marathon because there are so many things that
Mm.
can happen, so many things that can go wrong, and you really just have no idea how it's going to go until the day. So I sort of like that feeling of anticipation and not knowing what's going to happen, and then afterwards is probably always a combination of relief to get through it
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, just a rush.
You like that anticipation because that's what I'm like. Oh, I just want to get to the day.
Yeah, no, I sort of like it.
Yeah.
I like the atmosphere leading in and the
Uh-huh.
nervousness I get because especially nowadays, I think too that I've trained really hard for it, and I feel like I go into races now knowing that I've done what I need to do, and yeah, there's something nice in that.
How have you mastered managing marathon pain? You know, when you first do it and it's like a different kind, like you mentioned, the 5K is so much harder, right? The marathon is such a different kind of pain because it's just this like long endurance project. How have you learned to mentally manage that?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't find the marathon pain anywhere near as bad as the pain that you get in a 5K or a shorter race. I probably haven't really put enough time into mental strategies to manage it, to be honest. But it's never really been something that has bothered me too much. I think the main thing that I do for me when once I start getting really fatigued in a marathon, I feel like my legs just aren't doing what I want them to do
Mm-hmm.
anymore. Rather than being painful as such, I mean, I was in some pain in London, but it's more like I was describing it to somebody one day as it's like your legs turn into two cement blocks
Mm-hmm.
and you have to tell them physically what you need them to do. So I have to tell myself to lift my knee to bring my leg through, and then I have to try and tell myself to kick back, even though, at the end of the marathon, there's not much kickback happening as you push off. So it's more, I sort of use, I guess, instructions from my brain to my legs to try and, yeah, encourage them to keep moving and putting one foot in front of the other. But I was thinking recently I should even talk to someone and try and get some strategies I've heard people talk about ways of almost embracing the pain and turning it into a positive thing. So I'll often check in and, you know, tell myself it's actually not that painful. It's your legs are just heavy, or try and make a positive spin on it. But I think some more strategies to have in my toolbox would be handy because there's going to be some hard ones ahead, I'm sure.
I love that though, telling your legs, because I think oftentimes that is probably the most common issue with finishing a marathon as fast as you want to. You get towards the last 3 miles or whatever, and it's like, I feel fine. Like I can breathe fine, but my legs are not moving. That's
Yeah.
and so to actually like go through that process in your head, like keep pulling through, keep using that effort, because that's when you get
Yeah.
sloppy, that's when you slow down without even realizing you're letting yourself slow down so much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of distracting as well. You can, stop thinking about how far you've got to go and yeah, just cue into different parts of your legs and try and get them to get you to the finish line.
So you ran New York in 2016, the 226. What was that experience like? That's your first marathon in the States?
Yeah, so it was 2:27 actually
Oh,
in New
I'm
York.
sorry, 227.
That's okay. I would have loved to have claimed 2:26, but not quite. Yeah, that New York was awesome. I mean, that was a race that I'd always wanted to do anyway, and it was, yeah, it exceeded all my expectations. I'd heard about the crowds and the noise on First Avenue when you come off the Queensboro Bridge, and
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it wasn't until I was there running it that I really understood quite how huge of an event it is. So yeah, that was a really fun experience. And that day I just ran. I didn't wear a watch. I just wanted to race with the lead pack for as long as I
Oh,
could and
cool.
see what happened. Yeah, just to soak it all in because I know like because the course is fairly challenging as well. Time there was
Yeah.
probably not really. I wasn't really going for a particular time. I guess it was more just trying to race and get it finish as high up as I could. So yeah, I had Sinead in the race with me as well, which was really fun. So we just spent some time training overseas together before the Doha World Champs for the 10K. So yeah, we'd done a lot of our build up to New York together, and yeah, it was really really cool. We actually went the wrong way at one point. We came
In the
off
New York
the.
Marathon? I don't think I know this. No, maybe I do. I think I
uh,
do. Tell a
I've got a
story
funny
though.
video of it. So we were at the front, which yeah, I think we said to each other before the race, let's just race, but we won't. Let's try not to find ourselves at the front of the
Yeah.
lead pack. And then sure enough, we were at the front, um, just having and obviously having no idea where to go. So we got to this section where everybody went to the right hand side of the road, and there was a marshal standing there, but she just assumed, I think, that everybody knew where to go. And then we went left, and then we had to go under a roped off section to get back on course. And then as we went to go under it, Sinead got tangled in the rope and she spun around, and then I crashed into her. And then it was quite funny. It was, yeah. So it took us a little bit to get back onto the back of the pack, and we just looked at each other
Oh, that's funny.
like, what were we doing? But yeah, it was fun. It was pretty early on too. It was probably only 5 or 6K in. So
Okay, I
yeah,
had to have if I interviewed her after New York, didn't do that. I had to have talked to her about that. There's no way we didn't.
yeah. I'm not
Right?
sure if you mentioned
I
it,
feel like
but
there's a
yeah.
picture. Isn't there a picture now? I'm picturing a
There's
picture.
a picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's a photo of her getting tangled and me running into her, which is quite funny. We bring it up every now and then.
Oh, that's good. So you placed eighth though, right?
Yeah, I finished eighth. Yep.
And so was she fifth? She was fifth that year.
Yeah, she was fifth. Yep.
Okay, I mean that's high in New York. Did you feel good about that?
Yeah, I was really excited. I wanted to try and finish in the top 10.
Okay.
I actually, because we went out quite hard that day, it was a big positive split. But in my exhaustion in the last 10Ks, I'd somehow calculated in my head that I was coming fifth and that she was coming second
Oh.
because I could see her up the road and I saw her go past maybe Des, and I don't know how, but I missed three ladies that were further up the road that I couldn't see. And I crossed the line thinking that I'd finished fifth and she'd finished second. And I gave her this big hug and said, "Oh my God, you got on the podium." And she looked at me and she's like, "Oh, no, I came fifth." And I was like, "No, I came fifth." And she's like, "I don't think so."
Were you so
So
disappointed?
I actually wasn't really.
Yeah.
It took me a second to recalibrate that I'd actually come eighth, and then I was still stoked with that. But yeah, it was. I think when you're just so fatigued, you
Oh, yeah.
lose the ability to add up what time you're going to run and obviously work out what place you're coming. But yeah,
Do you
I was
remember?
still very happy with that.
Yeah. Do you remember what Des did that year? I can't remember.
She
She
came
must have been in
sixth.
between you guys. Okay.
Yeah. Des and Kellen was seventh.
Okay. Okay. And then you were eighth. Do you remember
Yeah.
who were you sandwiched between? Who was behind you?
Behind me was I can't remember if it was one of the Ethiopian girls, I think, who I'd come past
Okay.
in Central Park. Yeah. So there are a couple of African athletes behind me from memory. Yeah.
So 2019, that's the only time I mean, of course, I was running with all the normal people, like the non-pros, but
Oh, you ran that? Yeah.
I ran. That's the only time I've
Cool.
ever run New York, and I too was very intimidated. I was very intimidated by the hills. I shouldn't say I too. I don't know that you were, but I've run Boston several times, and so I kind of thought, okay, this might be a similar experience, but it wasn't. Like the crowds, you cannot compare. Like they're amazing, and like you were mentioning, coming off the Queensboro Bridge, I had heard about that and I was like anticipating it, and it was just as good as everybody said it was. And going up the Queensboro Bridge, I was most nervous about that because I heard it's such a long haul at kind of a critical part of the race. Um, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, the hills, I agree. The hills aren't too bad.
Because you
I
get to
think,
go down.
yeah, exactly. And there aren't any really sharp, steep ones. I think what I found was because we went out quite hard, and
Mm.
it seems like a lot of the hills are in the first
Mm-hmm.
half, or a lot of the big bridges, or the first, 25K or so. I felt like my legs just were beat up by the end.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was probably more that we went out, we ran the first half a lot faster than I'd expected to. So I was just, yeah, hanging on for dear life at the end. But yeah, it's not extremely hilly.
It's
I'd
kind,
love to do Boston though.
yeah. It's probably kind of like
Um,
refreshing though to just go totally watchless and just say, I'm just throwing it all out there and just doing what happens.
yeah, it was good because I think I'd done so many marathons where I was very, uh, I had a time in mind that I wanted to run, or it was all about the time. Whereas it was nice in this one for time not to matter at all, and
Mm-hmm.
and just to be there to race. I think without a watch, I can be a little reckless, so
Oh,
I'm not
sure.
sure if I would do it again,
Yeah.
to be honest. But yeah, it was a good experience, and I think that was the race to do it. Go no watch.
Is that tough though? Because, going no watch, you go out with the front pack, and if the front pack's going a little fast though, and you want to back off, but you don't want to run alone. So is that challenging as a pro who, I mean, you're going to be on podiums, don't no doubt about that, but if you're not really wanting to be as fast as that pack, but being with the pack is so beneficial, like how do you decide?
Yeah, and that's I guess that's the beauty of no watch, is that you don't it's probably easier to make that decision because you're not looking at your watch going, "Oh, I'm running way too
Yeah.
fast. This is going to end badly." I wasn't really thinking about that at all that day. And in the end, I think like my second half was 5 minutes slower than my first half or
Okay.
something. So it's
Oh
quite a
wow, you
big
did go out fast.
split. And usually in New York, they go out really, really slow for the first half
Yeah.
and then kick it down. So that was exactly what we'd been expecting to happen going into it. And I think it was Des actually. She was surging off the front to try and make it a
Interesting.
fast race. Yeah, yeah. So I think it was good to just go with it that day. But there are times where you have to decide, and particularly if time is important, if you're using it to
Mm.
qualify for something, you have to make that decision as to whether it's better to go with a pace that's a little too fast, or whether it's better to run your own race, which I think in most cases I would always choose to go with the pack, to be honest. It just makes for a much more enjoyable race. And yeah, unless it's ridiculously too fast and I know that it's an impossible pace for me to run, then yeah, I think I would usually choose that option.
Okay, so what now with Tokyo? What are your plans?
Yeah, so the way that our qualification system works is we use the World Athletics Times, and it's the top three in each event. So I'm currently sitting third in the marathon.
Okay.
So I'm the sitting duck waiting to get knocked out of the top three there.
Who is it?
So we've got,
Sinead and who else?
yeah, Sinead and Lisa Waitman, she's an Australian runner she's been to, I think this will be her fourth
Oh
Olympics,
wow.
maybe.
All in the
Yeah,
marathon?
yes, all in the marathon.
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
So those two have got the top two spots at the moment. And then there's a couple of other girls who could definitely knock me out
Oh
of that.
boy.
Yeah, I know. So it's a little bit stressful. And then in the 10K at the moment, I'm the only one who has the time.
Okay.
But yeah, there are other girls. Like we've got some really good young girls coming through as well, who could definitely get the 10K time as well over the next few months if they have the right race. So yeah, so I'm not really sure.
You
I
don't
would love to
know?
do the marathon. No, I don't know, but I'm hoping that I'll get to go in one of the events. If I get knocked out of both, that would be pretty
Uh,
disappointing, but it's definitely a possibility. But yeah, the marathon is my favorite, so I'm
okay.
hoping I'm hoping to do that one. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And I don't really want to do another marathon now because
Mm-hmm.
I kind of rushed back from an injury last year to do London, and I think I need the time to just get fit for this next 6 months, and a marathon block and then recovery would it just messes with my build into the Olympics basically, and there's nothing that's far enough out to really mean that you can recover properly and then reboot to peak in July, August. So I'm just going to take the risk and not do another marathon, and wait and see what happens.
Yeah, I heard you mention in an interview before London that you didn't necessarily think that this was going to be a race that you would PR in. And is that because you were coming back from an injury?
Yeah, so I missed a big chunk of training in the middle of the year last year. I had a foot injury, and
Okay.
then my build up to London was really I was quite underdone. I just couldn't, my foot couldn't handle, it was still basically a bit injured.
Mm.
So I could only handle relatively low mileage, and I just hadn't done the long runs and the workouts that I would normally do in the lead into a marathon. So I knew that I was going in underdone, but I hoped that somehow, all the marathon blocks behind me might help, and I might be able to pull out something that I didn't think was possible with good conditions and a good pace group and things like that. But in the end, yeah, I wasn't fit enough, and my legs, yeah, I sort of injured my calf a little bit in the race. I think I just hadn't done the done the mileage or the work on the road because I couldn't train properly on asphalt leading into it. So I'd done a lot of gravel or soft trail running, which yeah, my legs just weren't ready for the impact. So that was a bit of a hard day out, but even though the conditions weren't great, some people ran really,
Yeah.
really fast. So yeah, I think it was still a good race. It just wasn't a good race for me.
Why did you ultimately decide to go ahead and go through with it?
Yeah, I denied about it, and I just because there were no race opportunities that year and there was nothing happening here in Australia, I decided that I may as well just go and try and see what happened. And like I said, I thought maybe I could surprise myself and end up running faster than I thought I was going to. My coach said deep down he knew that wasn't going to happen, and he actually thought I was probably going to run even slower than I did based off my training that he'd seen. So yeah, I think it was more just like we were in lockdown here all through winter, and there was nothing really happening. So it was basically I just wanted to do something different and thought I may as well go and have a try. So yeah, I just did it anyway.
Yeah. So, in a perfect world, you get to run the marathon in Tokyo.
Yes, yeah, that would be my dream.
Would you do both if you got chosen for both?
They're on the same day, so
Oh, God.
it's impossible to do both. Yeah, and one's in Tokyo and one's in Sapporo. So
I guess I should know that.
yeah, that's hard. Well, initially they weren't. The 10K was a week before. Oh no, the marathon was a week before actually in the
Okay.
early stages. But yeah, I still wouldn't have been able to do both.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I
that
don't know who's done it, but I think Galen Rupp from America. I'm trying to think of other athletes who have done the 10K marathon double in the Olympics. Do you know of any?
uh, some of the Australian guys I know back in the 80s and 90s used to do it.
Okay.
I think because also then I think you could, if you were over there already competing in one event, you could just decide at the last minute if you had the qualifying time or whatever, you could decide whether you wanted to jump into the other event. It was a little more relaxed, I think, the whole selection
Yeah, yeah.
process. So yeah, I know some of them used to do it, or if you did the marathon and it went badly and you had to pull out at,
Yeah.
25K or whatever, then it'd be nice to have a backup race. But yeah, I'm not sure that it happens very often anymore.
Yeah, I mean, talk about endurance and getting a lot putting a lot on your body in one experience. Um
Yeah. The way that I feel after a marathon, there's no way I could do a 10K track race a week later. It's,
I
yeah,
can't
it takes me
imagine.
a
All
long
right,
time.
friends, if you are not already following Ellie on social media, I'm going to tell Ellie to start posting more.
Yeah.
It's Ellie Pash. So if you aren't already following her career, because I know a lot of our listeners are American listeners, and I love exposing um, people here to other athletes in other countries. So it's always so fun to get to talk to some of the international athletes. So Ellie, my request is you post more so I can do better stalking of what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm not very good at Instagram, but I'll work on it.
Hey, do you have, if we do end a podcast now, do you have 10 more minutes that we can keep you on to do some Patreon questions?
Yeah, sure.
And all that is I have like a support page for the podcast. And so there's like 250 people that support it. And so then they get access to the bonus information, or the bonus conversation.
Yeah, no
Okay,
worries.
cool. All right, so Ellie is going to stay on for Patreon. We're going to do a bit more. I wanted to get into a little bit more with your work as a physiotherapist and things like that. So we're going to go into a little bit more depth on Patreon. So if you support over on Patreon, you can get access to additional conversation with Ellie. That's patreon.com/Lindsay Hein. Okay, Ellie, what is one thing professionally or personally that you haven't done yet that you do want to do?
Uh, Go to the Olympics.
Yes,
That's probably
yes.
my number one thing. And I also really want to have a family.
Hmm.
So one day,
I
personally,
mean,
I guess.
I guess that for you, I mean, I'm just going to say it because it's just you mentioned you're 32, you want to run to your 40. So that's just a factor if you want to have biological kids that you have to think about as a professional runner. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And that's probably for me the one downside of when I've come into the
Mm,
sport is that my main career is going to be through my 30s, which is
mm-hmm.
also, yeah, probably the prime time to be trying to have children. So it's, to be honest, when the Olympics got postponed, that was a little bit disappointing for me from that aspect because I was really hoping to race in Tokyo and then try and have a
Mm,
baby after that. So putting that off another year has been, yeah, I mean, it was fine. I've got a little bit of time up my sleeve, I hope. But yeah, it's definitely tricky trying to plan that in with, yeah, falling pregnant because you don't know how long that's going to take, and then also recovering
yeah.
safely and properly to then start racing again. So that's something I have to try and work out over the next 10 years, I guess, how I'm going to try and fit a couple of babies into the picture if I can.
Who are some runners that are running at your level who are moms that you look up to?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. There's a lot these days. I mean, obviously Sinead, she's got two sons, and she's a huge inspiration. How she juggles her kids and work, and she's also been homeschooling them this year as well. So
Gosh.
that's been a huge mission for her. And I mean, a lot of the American runners as well have got got kids of their own, and they've come back and they're racing better than ever, it
Mm-hmm.
seems. So yeah, we've got a lot of role models here in Australia. There's Jess Stenson, who's now got a 1 year old who's coming on her way back as well. So she's one of the girls that will be up for Olympic selection for the marathon too. Lisa Waitman has a son too. So I mean, yeah, I think a lot of the best female runners in the world have got children of their own and are making it work. And I mean, I struggle enough to fit everything into my days without having any kids, so I can't even imagine how I'm going to cope. But yeah, I guess people just learn to make it work as they go.
Oh, for sure. You figure it out. It's not easy, but you figure it out. Well, yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of Alphine, here in the United States, winning the trials and then coming out and telling us all she's pregnant like 8 weeks before she's due. And then she's going to run in Tokyo. But I wonder, do you ever feel, I mean, you just put it out there and said it, but do you ever feel like you wanted to keep that a secret so that people weren't wondering, like, is she going to get pregnant? Because you never know once you start trying, like, if it's going to work and all those things. So does that feel pressure to you?
Uh, Not really, to be honest, but I probably don't. I don't know what it's like to be trying and for it not to be happening.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think that could definitely be a tricky situation if you'd told everybody
Like, we're
around you
going to
that
try.
that
Yeah.
was what you were planning. Yeah, and then every time you see people, they're expecting you to tell
Uh-huh.
them that you're pregnant or having a baby. But yeah, I mean, I'm not, I guess, worried about telling people that's in my plans over the next 5-10 years, because I'm sure probably a lot of people are expecting that anyway. And I get asked all the time at work by all my patients, "Oh, when are you going to have a baby? You're getting on it. Time's ticking.
Oh my gosh.
Don't leave too long." So yeah, I'm used to having that conversation with people.
I my first job out of college, I was worked at a senior center, and I was like, when I was like 25, I was getting comments like that. I'm like, I'm 25. That's such a generational thing, though.
Oh yeah, exactly. And they say things like, "Oh, I had five
I
kids by the time
know.
I was your
Like,
age."
it's 2021 now, so times are different.
Yeah.
um. Oh, there was something I was going to ask you about that. Now I can't remember. Shoot. What was it? Hold on just a second. When you mentioned the Olympics. Oh, okay. I know what I was going to say. And we didn't cover this. Well, we can chat just briefly in Patreon, but just so everybody knows that Ellie has run on a World Championships team in Doha. So we'll talk about that on Patreon. But we didn't get to that in the episode. We talked so in so much depth about the marathon. But she did run in the World Championships in the 10K in Doha. So just so everybody knows that little fact about your career.
Yeah.
What is an accomplishment you're most proud of?
Uh, Probably the 10K in Doha, to be honest. That was, I think that was one of the best races I've ever had. And again, like I said earlier, I'm not very comfortable on the track. I don't feel like I'm experienced enough, and I just don't have the speed and the change of pace that a lot of those girls do that I'm racing against. And that race, I was completely surprised by the times that we ran that day. I was thinking with the heat, even though the stadium wasn't anywhere near as hot as outside, but I was thinking, oh, there's no way we're going to run um, fast times. And I was very intimidated by everybody that I was running against, all these women that are, yeah, basically the best in the world. So for me I just went into it with no expectations and just tried to hang on for dear life basically the whole race. And every time a move was made, I tried to go and keep up. And yeah, that I realized, I think, with about maybe 3 or 4 laps to go, roughly what pace we were on. And that was, yeah, a huge surprise to me. And I just basically gave it everything I had to get to the finish line. And I realized that if I kept going, I could run the Olympic qualifier, which wasn't really something that had crossed my mind in the lead in, to be honest. So, yeah, that was definitely probably, I think, my best race I've ever had.
So hot, too.
Yeah, I mean, in the stadium, the air conditioning cooled it down quite a
Oh, I
lot. So it was
forgot. Yeah.
probably, yeah, we were probably like 20, oh, I don't know what this is in Fahrenheit, but maybe like 25, 27 degrees Celsius. So still warm, but those poor marathoners
Yeah,
out
that's where my brain was
on the
going. I
road.
forget you're in an air conditioned stadium.
Yeah. So
Oh,
my coach actually ran the marathon in Doha.
oh my
He was
gosh.
in the marathon, and yeah, just from when we landed and got off the plane and felt that wall of heat, I was like, oh, I'm so worried about him. But yeah, he did
Oh,
well.
so hot. Okay, we're going to talk about that on Patreon too. I have a question about that. Um, what is the most recent book you've read?
So um, at the moment, well, I actually just read quite a good book about the Russian doping scandal called The Russian
Oh,
Affair by
okay.
David Walsh. And then at the moment, I'm actually reading Ben Rosario and Scott Forble's book,
Mm, Inside a
which
Marathon.
is Inside a Marathon. Yeah, I was just trying to remember the name. So, yeah, that's been good so far. I'm only about probably a quarter of the way through that, but yeah, I like sports books and autobiographies and things like that.
How much do you follow American distance running as an Australian?
Yeah, quite a lot. I think all Australian runners probably follow the American scene just because, I mean, the depth of the races that you guys have over there and the depth of talent, and we're very exposed to it through social
Mm-hmm.
media and even things like Flow Track. And yeah, so I think yeah, I follow it relatively closely. I watch a lot of the races when I can with the time difference,
Yeah.
and yeah, I feel like I know what a lot of the, particularly the female marathoners are up to because I follow a lot of them on social media. So yeah, it's cool to see. I think the structure over there is really great too, with the training groups and
Mm-hmm.
the locations that you've got for altitude training and things like that are pretty, yeah, it's pretty epic. So we're a bit jealous we don't have quite the same
I love that
same
you
mountains.
said epic. My 8 year old is like so into saying epic right now. He's always like, that's going to be epic. And I know he heard it from something on YouTube or whatever, but like that's his go to phrase right now. This is so epic.
I might need to work on my
No,
vocabulary if
it's
I'm
awesome. I love it.
speaking.
Who is someone fun, motivating, or inspiring that you'd like to have coffee, tea, or cocktail with?
Mm. Um, oh, that's a hard one. Fun, motivating, or inspiring. You might need to cut all my arms.
Oh, yeah, I will. It's totally fine. No big deal.
Oh, I don't even know. Well, maybe because of the book that I'm reading at the moment, but I would like to have maybe a coffee with Ben Rosario and just pick his brain about marathon training. I think that my coach, Julian, has a very similar philosophy to his. And I've listened to a lot of podcasts that he's done too. And yeah, I find him very intelligent, very interesting to listen to. So yeah, I think maybe have a discussion with him about training would be my choice.
I love
What a
it.
boring run is
No,
that answer, isn't it?
I think it's a fun answer. And Ben's super generous with his time on podcasts and whatnot. I mean, I know, a lot of media that he does and the group does, it's like part of their deal with Hoka. Like they're gonna be out doing interviews and things like that. But I just love how transparent the NAZ elite group is with their training and just like putting it out there and saying we're going to show up to the start line, you can see what we've done, here it is. And I think that's really cool, and you don't always see that in elite running.
Yeah, there's a lot of like a lot of people are a little bit secretive with their training and what they're doing, which yeah, I mean that's fine if people want to do it that way, but I agree. I like it when it's all out in the open, and yeah, it's really interesting to see the different ways that people do things. And I mean every athlete's different too with what works for them, so I don't really see the point of being too secretive about it. But we're pretty open with our training as well. Like Julian and I, we're on Strava,
I was
and
going to ask if you're on Strava. Yeah.
yeah. So anybody can follow what we're doing. It's nothing, not rocket science, I guess. But yeah,
Okay, Ellie, what's your message that you want to leave our audience with today?
um, I think that if you're struggling for motivation at the moment, particularly with races being cancelled and things like that, the thing that I always think about to get me out the door when I really don't feel like it is that you'll never regret going for a run, but you will always regret it if you don't do it. So just at the moment, it's just get out there, get it done, tick the days off, and races will come back eventually. And you'll be fitter than ever.
Yes, they will come back. All right, friends. Ellie's going to stay on for Patreon. So check out that if you are interested in hearing more. She's just been so easy to talk to. I knew halfway through, I was like, I got to ask her to stay on for Patreon. This has been too fun. Thanks, Ellie.
No worries. Thank you.